So I just want to introduce Lisa Heth and ask her some questions about the human trafficking shelter in South Dakota. So, Lisa, first of all, tell us why is human trafficking a problem in South Dakota?
Well, human trafficking is a problem in South Dakota because we, first and foremost, I really believe that it's a spiritual battle. I it's like one of the largest in South Dakota. We're the second largest. I believe in 2014, I think there was 50 arrests of human trafficking, and so it's really become a big issue in South Dakota in our small communities. When most people think about human trafficking, they think about other uh, countries like Bangkok, but it's right here in the United States. It's right here in South Dakota, in our small communities, on our reservations. We're just seeing more of it, and the poverty, because of we have reservations where the poverty is uh, on the Crow Creek Reservation, our poverty rate is the fifth in the nation, and with Pine Ridge, um, the Oglala Sioux tribe being, I think, the number one poorest county in the nation, and so a lot of that plays into the poverty. And so when you're looking at that, then people seek to needing. So then you have those people that are out there recruiting, playing upon the victims that they know they're victims, especially the young girls. What they do is they recruit them by becoming their friend, maybe even boyfriend, and buying them things. They see where the families they come from, where there's drugs or there's alcohol. If they come from a poor family, the 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 pimps know that. They know who to recruit. Also, a big part of it is the drugs and getting the women hooked on the drugs. And so it's just become a really big issue in our state. And there is no place for our women to and their children to go to stay long term. They go to domestic violence shelters. Most of them only have 30-day stay. And so with the 30-day stay, um, and a lot of them have so many layers of trauma that need to be removed. And when you're looking at staying in a 30-day shelter, then the anxiety that you have about the counting down on time. So so we so Pathfinder Center is going to be the first of its kind in South Dakota that will be able to provide a service to many of the victims, and and it's centrally located, and we'll be working with a lot of the service providers in throughout the state of South Dakota.
Okay, you mentioned that South Dakota is the second largest. Do you mean that the second largest incident of human trafficking is in South Dakota?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. Um, it's just interesting that you have gotten an opportunity to put together this facility. Could you explain how it is that this facility came about?
Yes, of course. Well, actually, it was all totally God. It I can't take any credit for it. I can't take any glory for it. It this is something God came up with. One day out of the blue, I get a call from a person about a motel, actually calling it something. It wasn't even about the motel. And then when he mentioned about the motel, my spiritual ears perked up, and I was like, "Okay, God, what's going on here? What do you have?" And excuse me. So the guy says to me, I asked him about leasing it, rooms, and he was like, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "I don't know." And he asked me to look at it. If I wanted to look at it, and I'm thinking in my mind, why would I want to look at it? But the Lord said yes, told me to go look at it, which I didn't really understand why. So the next morning, I met the guy. We walked through there, and I we prayed and was like, "Okay, God, what do you want?" And the whole human trafficking just kept coming to mind, and and um so while we were praying, the Lord just flashed 150,000 in my mind, and then said, "Ask him how much he wants for the motel." So I was like, "Okay," and I asked him. I said, "How much you want for the motel?" And he goes, "Well, really," he goes, "I don't even have it on the market. I really wasn't even thinking about selling it." He goes, "But if I had to sell it, this is what I need." And it was like not even close to 150,000. And I'm like, "Okay, God, I don't get this. Like, why are you having me ask? We don't even have the money, the funds for this." So so then I asked him how much time I had, and he said, a couple weeks, because he was looking at opening up for the summer, or this opening up in the spring. So anyway, I told him I would get back to him, and then the following next couple weeks, I went to the bank, provided him all the information, and then the bank said, "Oh, and by the way, we need $150,000 down payment." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, God." And I told my assistant, I'm like, "Okay, we need a miracle. We need to pray. They want 150,000." I took a piece of paper, wrote it down. I said, "God, if you want us to have this is then you come up with the funds." And and I knew there was a connection. Then I remembered the 150,000 he flashed in my mind, and so I was like, the next day I was driving and praying, and I said, "Lord, I know you got this. I'm not gonna worry about it." And so I was praying, and then Terrence called, and when Terrence, I answered the phone and told Terrence about it. I said, "Hey, you know," I go, "Yeah, I gave him all the everything that they asked for the bank, with the paperwork, or finances, audits, all that stuff." And I said, "But they want 150,000." I said, "I don't have that." I said, "I know God has it. Got to wait on Him." And Terrence says, "No, I'm going to put up the 150,000 for you, and that'll be a loan on the side." And I was like, "Okay." And um, so after I got off phone, I was just praising God. I'm like, "Okay, God," but yet I was just like so afraid, like, "God, this is really happening." And previous to that, when I was first looked at the motel, and when I was coming back from the motel, um, driving home, and I was like, "Okay, God, what's going on here? Would you really trust me with something this huge, just this huge?" And God reminded me. He said, "Remember, you were praying 3 weeks prior to that," which I was praying in my living room, and I just was praying and say, "Okay, God, what do you have for me next?" And God said, "This is what's next." And I was like, I just shook so bad and cried, and like, "Wow, God, are you serious?" Like, and so, yeah, and everything just completely and totally fell into place. It's God's grace, something that He wants to do. He wants people to know, I mean, He wants human trafficking victims to know how much He loves them, and He wants other people to sow seeds into this place, to let the women and children know that there are people out there, especially the Christian people, that love them, and that they have a purpose and a destiny, that they have a holy calling, and that we're to come alongside them and to love them and to help them to heal, remove those layers of trauma, and give them time that they can just come in and rest for a while before they they work on themselves so that we can just love them, they'll be able to stay for a whole year. So, um, so for the most part, a lot of South Dakota, uh, some of the churches, some individuals as well have all sponsored rooms. It's going to be a 14-room facility, and so far all those rooms have been sponsored. However, we we are still waiting for the release of the funds, and I believe it's all on God's timing. Um, and so we are in the process of converting some rooms to office space, to a large kitchen, and then also resource room, a donation room, and that will in the resource room we're hoping that uh, we'll be able to help the women with online classes, whatever it is, help them build skills so they can be able to become self-sufficient. And I think that is really um, important to provide them all of these, uh, not just physically, just the protection, but mentally and spiritually. I think there's a lot of programs out there that provide the services and that, but a lot of them don't include the spiritual aspect of it, and that's one real important thing that is the most important thing, and that's something that God wants us wants us to do is help them to learn how to pray and to come to trust our Father. And so I can't say enough about it, and I give all the glory and honor to God. This is his program, his building. It's not mine. I'm just being a vessel for God to use.
Okay. Lisa, I didn't mention before that you've had years in running domestic violence
Hmm.
shelters, and that was it last year you won the national award for the best director of domestic violence shelters. So you've spent a lot of time working with women and children who have been abused and
Yes.
suffered. What would be the one thing then that you would ask anybody that happens to see this video?
The one thing that I would ask, number one and foremost, is for your prayers for Pathfinder Center, prayers for all the staff. And secondly, is that if God is tugging on your heart to plant seeds there, um, to just be obedient to Him and plant His seeds. Or the other thing is, we are also looking at interns, volunteers that will come alongside of us and to provide those services at Pathfinder Center, because we'll have 4 rooms available that will be ready for volunteers and for anyone who wants to intern there as well.
Excellent. I guess one thing I want to reiterate and ask you again. Now, South Dakota has the second largest incidence of human trafficking in all of the nation of the United States. But also, in this state, there is no other program that will bring human trafficking victims in and help them recover, put them back on the path to being self sufficient and having a healthy life. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And one of the things too is that, God is been so good is when we tap into I mean we ask God for directions, and He gives us those directions. A lot of times when we're doing services, we sometimes don't even think about asking God, like, okay, what shall we do? How do we do this? And when we ask Him how to do things, He will show us that. And one of the things that has showed me um, is the Christian community, the churches, to be able to reach out. Um, because, like I said, one of the things is providing self-sufficiency. And after women, after we've helped them, and after they have been healing and self sufficiency. And after that year or whenever they're ready to leave, is that we're hoping that there are many of the churches that will come alongside of us and that will sponsor women or their children, that if they decide that they want to move to for instance, like someplace like Watertown or Rapid City, that there'll be churches that will say, yeah, they'll be their church family and help them to find that home, help them to find a job, be their church family, be their family, and do that follow up with them, so that way they're not falling back into that. Because if they have that support, if they have the support of the church, um, then our the women will not fall back into it. And that's my call out to especially people in South Dakota, or anywhere for that matter. I believe the only way that we can combat human trafficking is through prayer, and it's a spiritual battle that we need to pray, pray for the women, and that's the only way that I see that is going to make a difference.
Absolutely. One thing that I failed to mention, now you're providing also for the children of these women to be housed and be helped there. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. In We'll have two of the well, specifically two rooms that are large enough that will be able to provide for if they come in there with, you know, 3, 4 children, we'll be able to house them there and provide those services for them. So
And so people who want to get in touch with you, is a website or something that they can contact you on?
yes, they can contact us at pathfindercenter.org. Again, that's pathfindercenter.org, or you can find us on Facebook, which is pathfindercenter.org. I'm not sure how that
Okay.
is, but I think if you just type in Pathfinder Center, I think it's a program of Wachoni Wawokia. So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so
yes,
much, and God bless you now on this Pathfinders.
thank you.